So free will is not powerful than prarabdha or destiny?
Yeah, Bhagavan has talked about both those things, two different places. At one time, Bhagavan said, yeah, sure, you should exercise your free will. The other time, Bhagavan said, what is free will? You have no free will. It's only going to happen if you have the prarabdha to be able to initiate free will.
Oh, so even to exercise free will, we need that prarabdha.
There's nothing called free will. Bhagavan has said there's nothing called free will. Just as there's no coincidence in life. There's no coincidence. It's all happening exactly the way it was programmed. Everything. This dialogue between you and I was predestined. Ramana Maharshi taking 2.5 days to reach Tiruvannamalai from Madurai, though it should have taken only one overnight journey at that time, was prarabdha. Him being asked to leave the temple on his way to the Tiruvannamalai, and the priest telling him, "There's no food for you. We are closing the ashram temple. Get out," was prarabdha. And therefore, this is the other thing to understand. Whenever difficulties are thrown at me, I should be happy about it.
Oh, is it?
I should be thinking I'm blessed. If my life is too smooth, everything is happening right, and whole life, most of the people have a very smooth life. They have a job, the children have grown up, they have grandchildren, marriages are taking place, and they are saying, all my responsibilities are over, I love God. Does the God love them? Does God
Oh,
love them? You love God, but does God love you? There's a beautiful poem that I read. That's my private collection. I have only very few things. I'm going to read that poem to illustrate this point. And therefore, what we are supposed to do is whenever there are hardships, hardships are the blessings, not the worldly success. Worldly success will still come as part of.
I say marriage in this particular way more than for like uh, or for having a company. I say like I can be a tool to bring forth that atma and for that atma to perform its duties, whatever it has to perform.
The other
So
person's
see,
Atma, your Atma you're talking about.
the child I'm giving birth
Oh,
to, so
okay,
I'm
okay.
just a tool for that atma to perform its duties or its karma. So I'm just like birthing and taking care of that atma to go on its journey. So I just want to be that pathway for that atma to progress in its journey.
Hmm. It's a very, it's a good thought, but if I may take you to a different perspective of the same thought so that you can see the layers of it. Who's who is it that can do something for someone else? You actually cannot give birth to anybody unless a child is born and child is alive. You don't control anybody else's destiny just as you can't control your own destiny. So therefore, if I think that I am going to be the instrument for that soul to come and fulfill its uh, transactions in this birth, isn't that my own ego that I can be the instrument? Because that soul is always going to find another body to be born through, that nimitta.
Oh.
Familiar with the Sanskrit word nimitta, right? You want to be the nimitta of that soul. But at the same time, that soul, or whichever that soul is always going to find yet another body to be born. This is not the only time that soul is going to be born. Just as you've been born before, that soul is also born before. All of us have been born before. We all have been married before, divorced before, been husbands and wives before, been brothers and sisters before. Everything, all relationships that we can imagine, we all have lived with each other. There used to be a lady who used to come to the ashram. She's also still unmarried. She's almost now 50. When I first met her, I asked her, I said, because I was always like there was a difference, more than one generation. So I used to talk to people like, so have you really found anybody yet? So I asked her, Mona, I said, Mona, so she was in her 40s when I first, so I just asked her, I said, Mona, were you ever married or you always been single? Oh, Bandhuji, I've been married so many times with everybody that I don't want to get married. I haven't been married in this life, but I married everybody before. I said, beautiful answer. So, but she wasn't young when I met her. I mean, I met her when she was 40 in her early 40s. That's why I asked her, "Were you ever married before?" She says, "No, no. I married them all a lot of times. All of us have had a lot of food, a lot of asanas, a lot of sex, a lot of money, everything we have had. There's no need to accumulate it again. Priti mahadado patana karanam phalama shashvatam gati nirodhakam." Second verse. I cannot create the seed or the semen. I cannot create it.
Oh.
So when you think of being the instrument to give birth to a child is only as erroneous as thinking that I'm born for some reason, for a reason, all right, no, but that what have you contributed to be born? The vasana to be born again. Life is a curse. Being born is a curse. Therefore, the words like nirvana and moksha, liberation, heaven, what do they mean? Being beyond the cycle of life and death. And therefore, being born is not a happy moment. Dying is a
So
happy
death is a moment to celebrate, is it, compared to birth?
Death is the moment to be celebrated, and not the birth.
Yes, death is a moment to celebrate. Birth is a moment to lament. I know it's a very complex, very loaded concept. And as Bhagavan said, that this path of self-realization, this path of non-dualistic practice, Advaita Vedanta, practice of Vichara, is not for everybody. One has to know through one's heart whether one needs to follow Bhakti Marg or whatever Marg. But Advaita Vedanta, non-dualistic path, is not for everybody. Now, why is death to be rejoiced and birth to be felt sorry for? So just to allude to that, in the very second verse of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi's Updeshasaram, Bhagavan has said, Kriti Mahadadho Patana Karanam Phalama Shashvatam Gati Nirodhakam. Immersing yourself into this vast ocean of activities, you're only going to find results which are perishable. And on top of that, it is going to be a hindrance to your spiritual progress. Gati Nirodhakam. That propulsion, spiritual propulsion, is going to be or halted, and it's not going to be conducive to your spiritual growth. From that perspective, we must understand that being born or giving birth to a child, getting married prior to that, all these are worldly activities. Doing a job, earning money, doing business, and things like that, a labyrinthical maze of worldly activities paves the way for more immersion in this world. Whereas we all talk about moksha, nirvana, liberation, heaven, truth, self, but do we really understand and embrace that? If we really want to practice that, we cannot be continuing to be part of this world. We ought to withdraw from it. So that's why, from that perspective, death is a time to rejoice and birth not. Secondly, we talked about in this dialogue giving birth to a child so that that particular soul would have a better pathway to whatever its life is supposed to be. Now think about it. Again, from Advaitic, non-Advaitic, non-dualistic practice, Advaitic practice. We don't know about our whole life. We've been born because of previous vasanas. That's why we've been born, which is not a thing to rejoice. On top of that, if I think that I want to give birth to a child so that that soul can continue on its journey in whatever shape or form it may be, indicates a very, very, very deep attachment to life. It indicates that I have very deep attachment to worldly continuation, worldly life. And we need to withdraw from that. And thirdly, we talked about free will. And here is one of the dialogue by one of the devotees that lived with Bhagavan for roughly 10 years, from early 1940s onwards until Bhagavan's passing away. His name was Devraj Budalia, and I'm going to read a passage about 2 pages long about free will. And this is from the book called My Recollections of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. And he says, in this chapter, I'm setting down some of the important teachings of Bhagavan as I heard them from his lips in the course of my talks with him. One summer afternoon, I was sitting opposite Bhagavan in the old hall with a fan in my hand and said to him, I can understand that the outstanding events in a man's life, such as his country, nationality, family, career, or profession, marriage, death, etc., are all predetermined by his karma. But can it be that all the details of his life, down to the minutest, have already been determined? Now, for instance, I put this fan that is in my hand down on the floor here. Can it be that it was already decided that on such and such day, at such and such time, or such and such hour, I should move the fan like this and put it down here? Bhagavan replied, certainly. He continued, whatever this body is to do, and whatever experiences it is to pass through, was already decided when it came into existence. Thereupon I naturally exclaimed, what becomes then of man's freedom and responsibility for his actions? Bhagavan explained, the only freedom man has is to strive for and acquire the jnana, knowledge, which will enable him not to identify himself with this body, with the body. The body will go through the actions rendered inevitable by prarabdha, destiny, based on the balance sheet of past lives. And a man is free either to identify himself with the body and be attached to the fruits of its actions, or to be detached from it and be a mere witness to its activities. This may not be acceptable to many learned people or philosophers, but I am sure, Devraj Mudaliar is sure, that I have made no error in making this gist of that conversation that took place between Bhagavan and myself. Though this answer of Bhagavan may upset the apple cart of our careful reasonings and conclusions, I am satisfied that what Bhagavan said must be the truth. I also recall in this connection the following lines that Bhagavan once quoted to me from Thayumannavar on another occasion, wherein he said, this is not to be taught to all, this meaning the Advaita Vedantic path. This is not to be taught to all. Even if we tell them, it will only lead to endless discussion. He continues, Devraj Bodalaya continues in this dialogue, it may be well to remind readers that Bhagavan has given his classic answer to the age-old question, can free will conquer fate? In the following manner. In his 40 verses, where he says, 40 verses is Saddarshanam, in which he says in one of the verses, such questions worry only those who have not found the source of both free will and fate. Those who have found the source have left all such discussions behind. The usual reaction of Bhagavan to any such questions would be to retort, who is it that has this fate of free will? Find that out, and then this question will not arise. So here is a very direct, poignant dialogue about free will and fate. Do I have free will? Whose free will? Whose fate? And that's a question to be answered by those who really believe in Advaita Vedanta and practices it. And therefore, there's no free will. There's no volition. Just as I said in the video, in this dialogue, there are no coincidences in life. It's all predetermined. See you soon. Jai Arunachala.